They're called Australopithecus, and their foot is very ape-like. Actually, the only creature known to science today that has a foot just like a modern human foot is a human being like us.
Right.
So what did Mary Leakey actually find? I think she found evidence that humans like us were existing almost 4 million years ago in Africa.
But Darwin's theory is just so pervasive, or it's just been accepted as scientific fact.
Well, actually, most people don't accept the
Or theory, yeah.
And actually, here in the United
Yeah.
States, only about 10% of the American people actually accept the Darwinian theory of evolution as it's taught by the scientists. About 50 to 60% of the people believe that God created humans in the beginning just as they are now. And then there's about 30% who believe that God created humans by evolution, by guiding the process, which the scientists don't accept. They don't see it. They don't think there was any guidance at all. They think it was just an accidental process. And they would say it could just as well have been cockroaches ruling the world, rather than human beings. So I would say if you just left it to the people, the theory of evolution wouldn't be taught in the schools. Now, what we've got in this country is a situation where a few federal judges, in response to lawsuits made by the evolutionists, have imposed their beliefs on the American people. If it was just up to the American people and what they believed is true, evolution wouldn't be taught in the schools.
Now, you have some support from the creationist side because of the fact that you do believe in a creator or a designer, an intelligent design, but you also propose the theory that there may be some intermediary beings or advanced beings, as Paul von Word would say, like angels or spirits or some kind of higher self that's connected to humans that does guide us towards advancement.
Yes, and I think this idea of intermediaries between some supreme intelligent being and humans as we know them is part of every great spiritual tradition in the world. I mean,
every religion.
You mentioned the angels of the biblical tradition. And today many people have a very Hollywood idea of what angels are, just beings who are playing harps somewhere. But if you go back to the original Christian literature from the early church fathers, you see that angels had quite a controlling role, controlling various forces of nature and interacting with human beings in many different ways, one of which is giving messages from these higher sources. And it's something we find in Native American Indian traditions, the idea of intermediate beings. We find it in practically every religious tradition in the world. So yes, I do accept that as well.
Now, if people want to get your books, they can go to Amazon.com or go to your website.
Yeah, the books are pretty widely available.
mcremo.com or pretty much any bookstore. Most bookstores have your books.
If they don't have it on the shelf, they can order it for people. But the books are pretty widely available, yes.
Okay, so rather than evolution, your latest book talks about devolution. Now, what is the process of devolution? Can you explain that?
Well, after I wrote my first book, Forbidden Archeology, which is also available in this abridged popular edition called The Hidden History of the Human Race, people started asking, well, if you've got all this archaeological evidence that shows human beings have been here for millions and millions of years, that we didn't evolve from the apes, then where do you think human beings came from?
Right.
And my book, Human Devolution, was my answer to that question. And what I propose there, to put it in very, very simple terms, is that we did not evolve up from matter, as most scientists now believe. Rather, we devolved or came down from some level of pure consciousness or spirit, if you like that word. And in that sense, we could say that originally we existed as beings of pure consciousness, and we've become covered by matter. That's what the problem is. Not that our consciousness and feelings of love and thoughts of the divine have just come about because chemicals combine together in a certain way in the brain. I don't believe that. And I think there's a lot of evidence for a conscious self that can exist apart from the body. You've got, for example, medical studies of out-of-body experiences. You know, there are times when a person should be completely unconscious, as during a heart attack. The heart stops beating, blood stops flowing to the brain, medical instruments show that the brain waves stop. Person in that state should be completely unconscious, but many people in that condition report separating from their bodies, looking down and seeing what the doctors and nurses are doing to them. And there was an American heart surgeon named Michael Cremo. He heard some of these reports and he wondered, well, these people, are they telling the truth or are they just making up stories?
Right.
So he took a group of about 25 of these heart attack patients who had reported these experiences, and he carefully interviewed each one of them and asked them, tell me everything you can remember about what you saw the doctors doing. Then he went to the physicians who had treated them and asked to see their detailed medical records, which the patients don't see, and he found the stories matched exactly.
Right.
So you've got a lot of evidence that there is a conscious self that can exist completely apart from the body. But this is not what we're being taught in our schools today. We're being taught, no, consciousness is just chemicals operating in the brain. There's no conscious self or soul, if you want to use that word, that can exist.
But this is what all the major religions have taught forever, that our real essence, our spirit, our soul is just within the body and separates at death.
Yes, that's, I think that traditional wisdom reflects the truth more accurately than our modern so-called scientific knowledge.
Right.
And I think that's what's very important to get across to intelligent people who are thinking about these things. Now, there are a lot of people who just accept these things on faith, which I think is wonderful. But what I've tried to do in my work is give some people who may not be able right now to accept these things on faith some scientific and philosophical reasons to think, well, yeah, this is the best explanation.
Right.
And, you know, I mentioned this evidence for out-of-body experiences, these near-death experiences. I think there's another category of evidence, which some people believe, some people don't. But this idea that a conscious self can temporarily separate from the body and then re-enter the same body leads to another idea, namely that that conscious self can separate from one body and then enter another body, which would be the idea of reincarnation. And there is some scientific evidence that supports that idea. It comes from psychiatric studies of past life memories. For example, Dr. Ian Stevenson of the University of Virginia Medical School and his colleagues carried out thousands of studies of past life memories reported by young children. And in over 800 of those cases, they were able to verify the existence of the person the child claimed to have been in the past life. So I think there's a lot of evidence that we really didn't evolve up from matter, rather we have devolved or come down from this position of pure consciousness or spirit, and we become covered by matter. That's what the real truth is. But I think it's a process that can be reversed.
Yeah, so we're multidimensional, multi-level beings. We're existing on more than one level at the same time. We're bigger, we're more than just animals.
Absolutely right. I think we're part of a whole cosmic hierarchy of beings. And this is something, again, that's part of the great spiritual traditions of the world, that we live in a multi-level cosmos. Right now, we're in the level that's dominated by ordinary matter. It's, you know, it's inhabited by beings adapted to the conditions there. That's where we find ourselves now. But I think beyond that, there's a more subtle realm, you know, a realm dominated by the mind element. It's inhabited by beings adapted to the conditions